Hi friends, it's Janine Richards from Q101. Welcome to The Tour Life. Grab your all-access pass and join me behind the scenes of the music industry. Together, we'll discover how to live happier and healthier lives doing what we love. Today's guest is a tour manager and director who has worked with artists such as the Rolling Stones, Fleetwood Mac, Barbra Streisand, Lenny Kravitz, Chicago, Paula Abdul, Alicia Keys, Shakira, and Beyonce, among many others. In this episode, we discuss what it's like taking a leap of faith by leaving the family business to pursue a non-traditional path, how the industry can provide healthcare for touring professionals, the importance of educating people about the industry in order to create diversity in touring, the path to fulfillment in your career, and adapting to home life when you get off the road. Here is my conversation with Marty Hom. Marty, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. I'm so excited to get to know you. How are you?
Hi, Janine. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm well. So this has been a crazy year. So I'm really excited to see how you've handled it because you are quite the veteran. And what I'm curious to know, first and foremost, is did you always know you wanted to work in the music industry?
I knew that I loved the music industry. I didn't know if I wanted to work in it, but I knew that it was something I loved to do. I first and foremost started off as a fan. I just love music. And, if I could end up making a career of something I love to do and that I'm passionate about, hey, that was a plus. So at the ripe old age of 28 years old, I took a leap of faith and I said, okay, look, I'm going to give myself a couple years to try to make it. And let's see what happens. And if it doesn't work out, I can always go back to my old job. So,
yeah, that leap of faith, I can totally feel that. And I feel like a lot of people can. So that's really cool. So tell me, where did you come from? So was that like a lot of times, when you have a dream and you're going to take a leap of faith, it's only a leap of faith if you don't really know that it can happen because you haven't experienced, maybe family members or friends who were successful in it. Did you already come from a place where you had seen an example of success in the industry, or was it something completely new to your world?
No, something completely new. I grew up in Sacramento, California, and my family was in the grocery store business. And so, I started working in a grocery store when I was 15 years old, really since 5 years old, because I used to go to my grandfather's grocery store on weekends and work, so-called work at his grocery store. And then, so that was my family business. My father and his two brothers owned a small chain of grocery stores in Sacramento. And so I didn't think that I knew that I didn't want to do that for the rest of my life, and that I loved the music industry so much that I just wanted to take a shot at it. I wanted to give myself a chance. And as I tell my kids, and as I tell anybody who's willing to listen, you have to find something you love to do, something that you're passionate about. And it sure makes the years go by faster if you do that. And so, not having a job, not knowing really what I was going to do, I moved to Los Angeles, and again, being in the right place at the right time and getting a couple breaks, really let me move forward in something I love to do.
So tell me about one of those instances where you were at the right place at the right time.
Well, I started off as a production manager. Mostly did a lot of jazz acts. I worked with Grover Washington and George Benson and Lee Ritenour, old jazz guys. And so that's the kind of music that I really loved. So they paid me, and I was making, I don't know, $500 a week back then. And I was like, oh my God, I'm making $500 a week. And I get to hear the kind of music that I really love. And so I started as a production manager. I got my first tour management job in 1985. I tour managed Bill Withers. And, that was Bill's last tour that he ever really did. And I don't know if it was my incompetence or he just decided to hang it up. So tour managed Bill. And then John Marks at the William Morris Agency at the time recommended me to the manager of Sheena Easton. So I ended up tour managing Sheena Easton. And then my big break came in 1987, and a gentleman by the name of Howard Kaufman hired me to tour manage the band Chicago, one of my favorite bands. And that was it. At the time, Howard managed several different artists. He managed the Cult, Jimmy Buffett, Aerosmith. And so I went on to do, after he hired me to do Chicago, I went on to tour manage several of his other artists. I tour managed the Colts for him. I did Janet Jackson in 1995 for him. And then in 1997, he hired me to tour manage Fleetwood Mac. And here I am 23 years later with the band. And I would have never thought it would be possible that I would work with such an incredible, great band for this long. And here I am today. So.
Well, I imagine that while you were getting all of these opportunities to, work with some really amazing bands, you were also building a relationship with their manager. How was that evolution of, just meeting them for the first time and then really growing that relationship?
You mean with the band or with the manager? With
the manager, that he trusted you enough to continue giving you opportunities.
I think that's crucial, Janine, and what any tour manager, any good tour manager or production manager does is, not only do we work for the artists that we're hired to work for, we really work for the manager that hires us to work for that artist or that band. And it's so crucial that you gain their trust, that you do what they ask you to do. And so I think that I've always kind of carried that on through my career is to really get the trust of the manager. Not only get the trust of the artist, get the trust of the manager, because he's trusting you with his client to take them on the road. And, some managers go out a lot on the road and some don't come out on the road a lot. So, the ones that don't come out on a lot, and Howard Kaufman was one of those managers. He really didn't come out on the road a lot. So he kind of trusted you to just do your job, and just keep him informed on what was going on out there.
Did you, when like prior to joining the industry, were you always the type of person who had the ability to really take on this responsibility and run with it without having somebody hold your hand?
Yeah, I've kind of always been that kind of personality. You just got to get the job done. When I was young, I was definitely a procrastinator. So I learned that, being in the touring business, you cannot be a procrastinator. You have to get things done, and you have to get them done as quickly as you can. And so, I think I'm just one of those, guys that just jumps in there. And I have to tell you, I don't mind getting my hands dirty. I don't mind unloading a truck or loading a truck if I have to. You just jump in and you help wherever you can. And I think that you learn that when you go on tour, that it's definitely a team effort, that it takes every single person out there on the road to make it all happen every night.
How do you extend that understanding to the people that work on your team?
I have to tell you, one of the things I'm really proud of and grateful for is that, over the years that I've been able to build a great team of individuals who I work with. And I learned that really early in my career, that you need to be successful in this industry, that you need to surround yourself with great people. And then you have to just let them do their jobs. So, I've been doing this a long time. So I was able to, weed out the ones that weren't so good and kept the ones that were really, really good. And, some of the guys that have worked, some of the guys and girls that have worked with me have been with me for quite a long time. Some, for 25 years, 20 years. And so, I've always kind of kept that philosophy. Just hire the best people, let them do their jobs, know that you're there to support them and answer any questions or help them along the way.
One of the things that we talk about a lot on this show is the nature of touring being erratic at times and at times unstable because of just, having to switch between bands and having to build new relationships and having to juggle different dynamics and different group dynamics throughout your career. When you're able to bring on a team and, like you said, weed out what doesn't work and then really solidify the ones that you're going to bring on more often, how does that affect the way that everything gets done and also the experience that the people within the team come out with? Do you think it helps them have a sustainable career and be happier humans overall?
I think it's more about the attitude that you bring out on the road with you. I personally would take somebody who's new, inexperienced, but has a great attitude, who wants to be there, who wants to just help, who wants to be part of the team. So I'd be more willing to take one of those kinds of people out versus taking somebody out that has 30, 40 years of experience but complains and whines all the time. So that's what it is. For me, that's what it's all about. Being part of a team, having a great attitude when you come to work every day.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, and I guess that's how you would really become a better person to work with by showing up with a good attitude, and that's how you would get called back anyway. But it's nice to hear that as someone who's making hiring decisions, you're looking really at the attitude that this person is bringing about. So, did you always know that attitude was important?
Yeah, I've always been the kind of person to look at, to really try to figure out if a person really wants to be there or not, really wants to be on tour. Because as you said, touring is not an easy, thing to do. Either you really, really love it or you hate it, to be quite honest with you. And those that hate it really shouldn't be out there. Then you refer to something else that, the business is sporadic. It's one of the hardest things about being in the touring business because, you could go work for a year on a long tour and then you can sit home for 6 months looking for your next tour. So what I try to instill in people is that during the time that you're working, you really need to save your money. You really need to stash it away. And this is, who knows, we would have been sitting home for a year now, but this is one of the perfect examples of why you should do that.
Yeah, I love that. It's definitely something that you don't always think about when you're busy and you're working and, you're just kind of going with the flow. But now we're being forced to really reckon with our decisions and our planning and our lack of planning. Mm-hmm. How have you seen that with people that you come in contact with?
I try to keep in contact with most of my men and women who I work with, on tour. And I will tell you that the hard part, I think, for all of us is that we don't really know when we're going back. If you told me back in March of last year that we'd be still sitting here in January of 2021 talking about the pandemic and the COVID-19 virus, I would have shaken my head because I would have never believed it. And, I'm trying to be as optimistic and hopeful as I can. And, I'm thinking back in March, this will be over by the fall. And then when it looked like it was going to go longer, I'm thinking, it's going to be over by the winter. I have to tell you, I wish I could, tell you there was an end in sight, but right now I don't see it. I really don't.
How's that affecting you?
I'm fine. I've been doing this for a long, long time. So I was able to save some money, and but I really, my heart really goes out to those that are newer in the business, people in their 20s and 30s and 40s who are fairly new in the business and haven't had an opportunity to save money like I have. And I have to tell you, if it came down to it, I would probably recommend to those that are in the industry to probably start looking for another job, start looking for a new career, at least to get you by until there's some sign or some hope that we're actually going back.
It's interesting because I come from a place where like I'm kind of all over the place. I've had experience in various things, but I also know of a lot of people who have dabbled in different things and have gained new skills that at the end of the day do end up helping in one way or another with your main gig, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that?
That's, when you go on the road, you try to be as diverse as possible in terms of your skills. You try to learn as many things as you can. And I've always tried to do that, whether it was being a production manager or a tour manager or a tour accountant, and I think for anyone that is going to get into the industry, I would recommend they do the same. Be diverse. Do wardrobe, do catering, do whatever you can to get your foot in the door as you move up the ladder, and that'll help you, because definitely, being a production manager has helped me be a better tour manager in terms of budgets and dealing with production. So, I highly recommend that people try to learn as many skills as they can in the business.
So I'm really interested too in hearing a little bit more about your family, and because you said that you guys started, they owned a store, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did they kind of assume that that's what you were going to go into?
You know, when I was growing up, that was definitely the family business. And, my sister, who's a little bit younger than I am, she worked in the grocery store business for 40 years. And that could have very easily have been myself. I could have done the same thing. At that time, it was a great paying job with benefits and healthcare. And, so I could have but, growing up in an Asian American family, the mandate was kind of always, go to school, go to college, get a degree, and be a doctor or a lawyer. So, being in the music business was a bit of a U-turn in my family. And so, but I have to tell you that my mom and my father were very, very supportive of me in whatever I decided to do. I'm sure they didn't think that I was, I'm sure they didn't, think that I would make it in the music business. But, when I was growing up, getting into the touring industry, it was an opportunity for people like myself with no musical talent whatsoever. Somebody like me could actually make a career in doing it. And now look at what it is. Well, when we're working, it's one of the main sources of revenue or income for any artist. In fact, it is the main resource or of income for an artist.
Yeah, that's a really great point. With music, it's funny because you have Spotify, right, and iTunes that show up and take all the royalties away from everybody, and you're not making money anymore. But it really placed a huge importance on touring. Did you see that transition? I'd love to know kind of what you noticed during that transition of like going from, getting a record deal and getting money from royalties and selling records to all of a sudden, no, actually it's touring. That's the bread and butter.
I got to tell you, to be honest, I never saw it coming. Never saw it coming. I was, it was one of those things where an artist would go in the studio, record a record, release the record, and then go out on tour to support the record. And, it's just the way it kind of always had been. And then, all of a sudden this transition started taking place. And I really couldn't wrap my head around the whole thing, really. I mean, to be honest with you. And look what it's become today. It boggles my mind that now it's all about, touring, about, going out and touring and playing in front of your fans. And it's about streaming and, because when I was growing up, I used to be one of those kids that used to go in the record store every Tuesday when the new album used to come out and see what new albums have come out, what artists was releasing new music. And, it's sad. It's sad for me because it was always such a great experience for me. And I wish, younger people could experience the same thing, going into a record store and looking through records and looking at new artists and,
Well, it's funny because my boyfriend's niece and nephew, for Christmas, they got a CD player. So they're in high school. And they got like a boombox and they collect CDs. And it made me laugh because, I collect records and it's nostalgic for me. I didn't grow up with records. I grew up with CDs and cassettes. But I do remember like my grandpa had a record player. He collected records. And so it's kind of like, now, like my son, he's 12. He's probably going to be, I don't know, he might get like one of those like old school MP3 players for all I know. But it's nostalgic and people do tend to find a way to still get their hands on the music, right?
Yeah, I agree. Look, I went into one of those, like used record stores, just walked in and that's what I do kind of when I'm on the road. If I see a used record store or find the used records, I'll always go in, kind of browse and see what they have. And, I heard some music playing. And I said, boy, that sure sounds good. The fidelity sounds really good. And, I looked back behind the counter and there was the turntable with the record on it coming out of a couple speakers. And, it just sounds different. I don't know if it necessarily sounds better. It just sounds different,
Yeah, it has like a warmth to it and just
Yes.
like extra things going on that you don't always notice when files are compressed.
Exactly.
I love that. So does going into record stores and things when you're on tour, what does that do for you?
I guess I'm reliving my youth. I guess, I go into a record store and I always immediately go to the jazz section and see if there's, any, Miles Davis, kind of blue albums that are, look brand new. Or I go to the old R&B section and see if there's any great, great old R&B records that are, in vinyl that are still in an immaculate condition. And so, it's just still something fun to do.
Does it help you when things are really stressful?
I tend to be pretty even. I don't really get stressed out. Not anymore. When I first started, I definitely had my work speed of stress. But now, it's pretty. I just kind of take it with a grain of salt, and kind of go with the flow. So my stress levels don't get too blown out of proportion anymore.
How did you get to that point?
I think as a point in your career, and look, you never really see it all or do it all because, every time you go do a tour, something different will pop up, and so I think that you get out to a point where you feel pretty secure about the kinds of decisions you make, that you're willing to make those kinds of decisions. And so I guess it's just experience, when you've been doing it for 35 or 40 years, it just, becomes secondhand, just like, anything that you do in life. I think you just have to just continue to grow and grow. And then you reach a point where you pretty much done all you can do and you just do the best you can.
Do you remember a time when you didn't understand that and you let the situation get the better of you?
Not really. I used to be more of a control freak when I started. And look, I've had an incredible tremendous career, and I've worked with some incredible artists. And I did some really, really big tours. I did, back in the early '90s. One of my, we talked about breaks. One of the first big breaks, another big break that I got was I did Paula Abdul's tour in 1991. And at that time, she was, one of the biggest things on the planet. And, it was a huge tour. It was, I think, back then we probably had 14 semis and, probably 150 people on tour, And I think, I used to be one of those guys back then that would have to, do everything, And nowadays, not so much, and that goes back to what we talked about before, is, finding good people to work with you and let them do their jobs. And so, over the years, I've kind of let go of the control freak thing and just let people do their jobs.
It has to be very freeing to find, to realize like, hey, I can trust the decision that I made by hiring the right people, and therefore it's okay for me to let go and just let them do their jobs, which is something that I think you appreciated when you were allowed to just do your job, right?
Yes, absolutely, 100%. And I think a lot of that, Janine, comes with, the artists that I've worked with and the length of time I've worked with them. For example, I worked with Fleetwood Mac now for 23 years and Barbra Streisand now for 21 years. And even some of my newer clients, like Shakira, I've been with her for, 11 or 12 years now. And so I think that just comes that they have the trust and the faith in you to make the right decision for them.
Let's talk about the industry a little bit and the things that you've seen in the past. Is there anything that you would like to see moving forward now that we've all had a chance to stop and really evaluate the way we had been doing things?
Yeah, there's a couple things. And I actually started working on this during the kind of right at the beginning of the pandemic. And so I think the touring industry is kind of still the same when I got into it 40 years ago. And it's still a little bit like the Wild Wild West. And I think eventually what I think we'd like to see is I think there needs to be healthcare for the men and women who work in the industry. And I started working on that with a few guys, again, at the earlier stages of the pandemic. We've kind of put it on hold right now because obviously there's no touring and the funding of it would come from touring. And so I think I would like to see someone, if not myself, someone just maybe as a group push through and get healthcare for men and women. I would like to see more diversity in the touring industry. I have to tell you, I'm one of the few Asian Americans that I know of in the industry. I'd like to see more women in the industry. I'd like to see more ethnic diversity in the industry. And I think we can all make great strides in those areas as the industry continues to grow.
Tell me a little bit more about the healthcare aspect, because I completely agree with you. I think in this country, in the US, healthcare is what holds a lot of people back, especially from starting their own business. And if you tour, I mean, that's what you have. You are your own business, right? Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit more, like what are some of the things you would like to see when it comes to healthcare, and how is it feasible to make it happen?
Well, before during the early stages of the pandemic, we started talking about it. And it's not like it hasn't been attempted before to get healthcare for the men and women. And the problem, every tour has workers' comp. So if you get injured on tour, obviously you're medically covered. But what has happened is we've always come against, how are you going to fund the healthcare? And so one of the gentlemen I was working with, Tom Ross, who used to be at CAA, he was the head music he was the head of the music department in CAA, wrote a piece. I think it was published in either Billboard or Polestar, one of those two magazines. And he basically said, this is $1 billion industry, multi-billion dollar industry. And yet the industry can't supply healthcare for the men and women who work in it. And he basically suggested that, the funds come from like a ticket, at 5 cents or to every ticket. And it should go into a fund to help cover healthcare. And so, he called me after the article came out and said, what do you think of this, Marty? I said, well, I think it's a great idea. Just like, every show pays for ASCAP and BMI and music publishing rights. Why not tack on a nickel or a dime for every ticket to help fund healthcare? And so we started going down this path, and that's kind of how we would fund it. And then we got farther along. We talked to labor lawyers about it, and we talked to insurance companies about it. And we're just, like I said, it's kind of put on hold right now until it looks like we're going to come back. So,
yeah, it sounds like there's some, pretty simple idea that can definitely work. And it's really just about people getting behind it.
Yeah.
What are some major roadblocks that you're seeing, though?
The challenging part for healthcare is that, people work on a tour for maybe 3 months or 6 months, and then they're not working on a tour. And then, whenever they pick up their next tour. So the challenging part is like, you don't have a consistent employer. Like you're kind of, like you said, you're kind of a freelancer, you're an independent, and although you go on the band's payroll, when the tour's over, you're off the band's payroll. So those are some of the challenging things. And the other challenging thing is that, people on a tour spread out all throughout the country. You have people working from all over, they just don't come from one state. So they come from various states. And so that's a little bit challenging as well.
Well, I would love to hear so much more about it. And I think that's something people want. And it's my firm belief that as long as you want it badly enough, you can definitely make it happen.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you think that there are enough people that want it badly enough, especially enough decision makers that are influential that can make this happen?
I don't know. We didn't really get to that phase. We didn't really start approaching people. I think the hard parts now is going to be that, you're already, whenever tours resume, it's going to be a challenge because you're going to want to try to utilize every dollar that is, from a ticket that's sold. So, and then you have to think about the economic ramifications that have happened through the pandemic and how people, are hurting for money right now. And so I think the big question is going to be, when we come back, are people willing to give up a nickel from every ticket when they really need that money when we haven't toured for, we're going on a year now. So, and nobody really knows how much longer it's going to be. So I think that's going to be part of the challenge.
Well, we'll just have to ask Live Nation how they do it, because they always figure out how to charge you all the fees.
Exactly.
I love it. Well, it's really great. It's great to hear that, you have some minds that are actually trying to figure out practical ways to make something like that happen, because it really is. It's a huge obstacle and it is a complete game changer.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've experienced a lot of people who have seen negative impact simply from not having access to care.
Yes, absolutely. 100%. And, people need it more than ever now. I mean, they really do.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me a little bit more about diversity and how you see that being implemented into the future. Do you think it's something that needs to be done more at the individual level, or do you think it's more of an institutional thing?
I don't know. Haven't quite wrapped my head around it. I talked to a few people about it. I think what it is. It's about educating people. I think it's about educating people that there are some opportunities out there for you. That there is an industry that can provide you with a decent living if you have some skills. And I think it's just about getting people interested in it. To be honest with you, I don't think a lot of people know about touring and about what we do and what is required and the jobs that are available. And so I think maybe it's maybe, and again, I'm just talking off the top of my head because I really haven't given much thought about it. I know that we need it, but I haven't thought about solutions. But I think that's what it is. I think it's just about informing people, educating people that there are opportunities out there.
Yeah, that's funny. So as a high school teacher, that was always my thing. I mean, if I ever saw a student that, showed any interest in the arts, like I remember there's this one kid who I'm sure he's going to do great things, but he was like, we had iPads, so all of our students had iPads. And I would like catch him like making beats like on his iPad when he was supposed to be doing Spanish. But, I encouraged him and I was like, hey, why don't you read this book? Real Artists Don't Starve, and, check out this podcast. And, I hooked him up with like the Hoopla app so he could download books for free and stuff. And my hope is that, he'll be able to see his creativity as an actual thing that will lead him to a sustainable career. Because the image that I think a lot of kids get, especially from their surroundings, especially if they don't know anyone who has been successful in the arts, is that, it's kind of just like it's not a real job. And, eventually you're going to have to do something serious. And so, yeah, I completely agree. I think it's about showing people that it's actually, it's a real thing.
Yeah. And I think once you show them a real thing, I think then they have to understand that they have to put in the work ethic. I mean, they have to really have great work ethic. And I think, if you want to talk about artists, all the great artists, the one thing that they have in common is work ethic, whether it's, Beyonce or Barbra Streisand or Bette Midler or Shakira, all those artists that I've worked with, they have one thing in common, and that is they have incredible work ethic. And so if you're young and you're interested in getting into the business, you have to bring that same kind of work ethic with you.
So what are some things that you're excited about as far as getting people to be more aware of the opportunities in the industry?
I think there's opportunities out there now that young people have that I did not have growing up. So you can actually go to school now and get a degree in music. You can go to college like USC or Berkeley School of Music, and I think there's several others around the country that have, music schools. And there's nothing like the way we learned was just get thrown in the fire and just learn under working conditions. You just get in, and then you just got to figure it out and resolve any issues by yourself for the most part. And so I think that's a good way that young people are trying to get into the business now. They're starting to take classes, understand it, and I'm fortunate enough to go speak at some of these classes. In fact, I'm talking on a class at USC next Monday, impart some wisdom on them about touring and what I do. And, hopefully, and a lot of the kids, they follow up with me and keep in touch with me. And, I encourage them to continue. And so.
I love that so much. And that's actually something that I find really interesting that, 5-1 will ask me on occasion about, because he's putting together some sort of program for like a class that he's gonna help out with, or that he's gonna teach. And it's so nice to hear, because I remember, I'm 32. I'm almost 33. I always think I'm 33, but I'm 32. And even when I was in high school, part of it is that my parents were immigrants. I was born in Mexico. Our only scope of, what we thought was possible was, similar to, I think, what your parents saw too. It's like, you either run the family business or you become a lawyer or a doctor or an accountant, and that's what you do, or you become a teacher. Right. And I would have liked to see more non-traditional opportunities being shown to me. And so when I started to see that, that's something that the veterans in the industry are doing, actually going out and giving their time to show people how it's done, because like you said, it was more of an apprenticeship thing, right? Where you just hover over the sound guy and figure out how he mixes in order to do it and stuff. And so I think that's really, really, really cool. So what are some of the things that you've learned from being involved in these experiences?
I think, it's just really great. I think, Janine, for me, it's a way for me to give back to a community and to an industry that have been so great to me. And so if I could, spend an hour with you, or, an hour and a half with some students at USC or Berklee School of Music, this industry has given me so much opportunity. It's given me so much, and it's my small part to repay it.
So, Marty, tell me, did you have any expectations of what your life would be prior to living it? And how did those expectations meet with reality?
You know what? No, I didn't really have any expectations, nor did I really even think that I could maybe make a living doing this. And I'll tell you a funny story. So back when I first got started, I told my then wife, she said, "How much could you possibly make going out and touring?" And I sat down with a pen and a piece of paper, and let me just figure this out. And wrote some figures down, had a little calculator, and I turned around, and in all seriousness, I said to her, on a good year, I could probably make $37,000. And she looked at me like I was insane. And I don't think that the money, look, and I tell people this, you never take the job for the money. You don't get into this touring business because you say, I can make a lot of money doing this. You get into the business because you love it and because you're passionate about it. And that goes for anything you do. And if you're good and you put in the work ethic, the money will eventually come to you. And so, no, I didn't have any expectations when I first got into it. It has far rewarded me in things that I could not even imagine. And if I had to do it all over again, I'd do it exactly the same way.
Do you think it's really important to take the time to really get to know yourself in a way that you understand what lights you up and what makes you a passionate person in order to find what your spot is in the world?
Yeah, I think so. I think, and I can just relate it to what I do. And I'll give you the example. When you take that artist and you put them on stage and you look to the production manager, the stage manager, or whoever else is, and you say, okay, house lights. And that guy says over his intercom or walkie-talkie, house lights. And the lights go off and the fans start screaming. And this never gets old, ever. That, you know that you had a small part in making that happen for that artist and for those fans every single night. And every person on that crew feels exactly the same way. That they had a small part of making that happen.
It really does seem to come down to finding fulfillment through making other people feel good.
Yeah, I agree. And I will tell you, I truly love the people that I work with. They're like, and I know this cliche, and I know people say it all the time. And I'm sure you've done enough of these podcasts that you've heard it a million times. And they say that, the people out there on the road are my family. And is really honestly true. That they are, the people that I work with are part of my family.
I have, and I think that family aspect says a lot because it means that you're not in it for yourself. You're in it for the collective. You're in it for something outside of yourself. And I don't know about most people, but I know that the things that have always made me feel good about what I'm doing is when I know that I'm not trying to do it just to be selfish, to make, like you said, like to make money or just to, it's all about me. Like it's really that feeling that you get when you feel like you're contributing to a group and you get that connection and you get those relationships that are built and you get that respect and you show that respect and then you can work together to expand those positive feelings. I really think that's priceless.
You're 100% correct. You're absolutely correct. It's like a sports team, and like the Super Bowl is right around the corner, but it's like a sports team when you get to that ultimate accomplishment. And look, I mean, the people on the road, it's not all roses. I mean, they have to sacrifice a lot too. They have to sacrifice a lot. We ask them to get on a bus with a 45-foot bus with 11 other people sometimes. We ask them to leave their homes and their families for extended periods of time. So they too sacrifice. They sacrifice a lot to be there, to be out there on tour. And but you're right. The reward is the collective. Like you said, the collective feeling that you've all accomplished something at the end of the day.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons that it has always been, and not so much now that I've talked to people and I've started to really understand kind of what the situation is and what it's like to go from being on the road and, putting together these amazing experiences and then coming home and then it not really meshing very well with your home life. What sort of experience can you speak to where those positive feelings that are fulfilling don't always translate to your home life?
That's a hard one because that, like I just mentioned, that it's a huge sacrifice that we ask of these men and women to leave their homes and come on tour. And you get those highs, those incredible highs when you're sitting in an arena and there's 15, 20,000 people, or you're sitting in the stadium and there's 50 or 70,000 people, and they're screaming at the top of their lungs, watching their favorite artists sing their favorite songs, and those are incredible highs. And then you come home, and what I learned is, and that's what I think is, I think you have to have some sense of evenness. And I think what I've learned is that, you finish a tour, you have to get home, and you have to adapt as quickly as possible to your home life. And what I mean by that is, there's garbage to be taken out, there's dishes to be done, and so there's no room service, there's nobody making your bed in the hotel, there's nobody cleaning up after you. You then have to pick up that responsibility and do it. And so it's hard. I mean, it's hard, but you have to adapt as quickly as possible because those people have been patiently and being understanding, waiting for you to get back home. And then you get home and then you have to adapt. They haven't waited for you. Their lives have continued. They still have to, kids still have to go to school, and, life still goes on with or without you, whether you're on tour or not on tour. So what you have to learn to do is you have to come home and adapt to them. They're not going to adapt to you. You're the one who's been gone. And so you just have to wrap your head around it and understand that, and just try to adapt to being back at home.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that you say that if you've been out on the road, their life hasn't stopped, and it's your responsibility to adapt. What sort of responsibility do you think the partner plays in that?
I think it's hard to answer, because I think it's different in every relationship and every family. It's different. I think they pick up all the responsibilities of running that household when you're not there. They're responsible for the kids. They're responsible for the bills. They're responsible to fix things when things break. And so, again, it's difficult to answer, because every situation is a little bit different.
Yeah, and I think it's just having that mutual understanding of what the experience your partner was having at home. Like, what was that experience like, and what was your experience like on the road, and how can you reconcile that when you come home by having that mutual respect and that understanding for that experience?
Correct. Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
Amazing, Marty. Well, I have one more question for you. What is something that when you're really, because yes, you through experience, you learn how to kind of manage your emotions and how to stay a little bit more even. But when you do have those moments that are really difficult to get through, what's something that you do, that you physically do, that helps take you out of it so that you can recollect yourself and move forward?
So here's what I tell people who work with me, especially the people that have to work directly with me, my assistants, my associates. I tell them before any tour, I don't really tell them anymore because they've been with me so long, they just know, that you need to take time out every single day for yourself. An hour and a half, a couple hours, whatever you need to focus on yourself, whether that's going to work out, going to have a nice dinner in the evening with friends, with people on tour, whether it's going shopping, whatever, go see a movie, whatever it is, you have to take that time every day for yourself. Because if you take that time for yourself, you're going to be better for me and be better for the tour. It's so important that that it's not all about the tour. It's got to be about yourself. You need, again, balance in your life. And so those are the things that I recommend, and we'll go back to something that we all love doing, go back and listen to some great music. Put a set of headphones on or turn up your portable speakers or whatever and go listen to some great music. And that's the reason why you're out there.
Yeah, never forget that, right? Don't lose the magic and don't get jaded.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us on The Tour Life. Please remember to rate and review the show on Apple and Spotify to help us elevate these important conversations. Join our community and get access to exclusive behind-the-scenes content. And you'll also be the first to hear about upcoming events and giveaways by connecting with us on socials at The Tour Life Podcast and at Q101 Chicago.
When you have sports mixed with your pop culture, along with humor and celebrity interviews, your earbuds are enjoying The Rich Eisen Show. Women's basketball legend, Sue Bird.
Caitlin Clark, obviously, front and center for the WNBA season. What have you seen over the first couple of games for her?
Part of professional sports is you're going to have some stretches. You're going to shoot bad. Your team's going to lose. And how do you respond to that? Everybody's clearly got their defensive game plan built around her, which is a compliment, but you got to figure it out from there.
Search for The Rich Eisen Show on YouTube or wherever you listen.